Welcome to Corporate Cafecito, a podcast based on professional development, career growth, and respecting our cultural identity. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Corporate Cafecito. Yo soy Nallely Vargas. And today with me, I have Yai Vargas. She is the type of person that you need to know. If you don't know who she is, you're really lucky to be meeting her for the first time. And for those of you who do know her, I'm sure you're still going to hear very impressive things about her career, her background, and who she is as a person. So, Yai, bienvenida. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Nallely. I'm so thankful to be part of this community, and a little bit about myself. I was born in Dominican Republic. I immigrated from there to Washington Heights, New York City, where I spent some time. And then I moved to New Jersey. So I'm definitely a Jersey girl, but for a lot of my career, as well as university, I was in New York City. I studied advertising and marketing communications. Very shortly thereafter, I was challenged to try to maintain my Spanish language skills. And so I made it a personal responsibility to try to find jobs and roles and opportunities that would let me practice my Spanish language and also learn a little bit of Portuguese, which I was very thankful for. I always drew myself to roles that focused on the Hispanic community. And so very early on, I started working in the multicultural marketing space with a focus on the Spanish and Portuguese speaking community in different industries, from automotive to pharmaceuticals, nonprofit, the sports industry. And then I spent about 9 years in financial services, eventually leading me here at ACER, the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility. That's actually been around for 37 years. We're based in Washington, D.C., and we are a nonprofit that's mission is to make sure that there's Hispanic representation in all parts of corporate America. So I do a bunch of other things, but that's sort of the 30,000-foot view.
I love it. So, but you didn't go to a traditional marketing school.
I didn't. It was actually a fashion school with a program focused and centered around advertising and marketing. To me, that was something that I didn't know that I loved. I actually wanted to go to school for graphic design, but unbeknownst to me, you had to have a portfolio, which nobody told me or taught me. And so I had to pick another certification, a degree, another area of expertise. And I said, what's the closest? Advertising, marketing? Great, let's do it.
How did you end up going to a fashion school? Because, like to me, it feels like sometimes we don't know about universities because we've never heard of them. And then when you think about how did you find out about that one, or what, how'd you get there?
Yeah, well, I was always drawn to being on trend and in fashion, and living and growing up here in New York was always just such a vibrant fashion community. So I always personally loved it. Someone had told me about the Fashion Institute of Technology. I applied to a number of universities in Florida. My mom was like, no, you're not leaving the state. And so one thing led to another, and I made my way to the Fashion Institute of Technology. They had a great program that centered around marketing, and it ended up working out. I loved it.
You're there, you love it. You have to find it. Where did you go job hunting?
Well, I was asked by a career counselor what my favorite brand or company or organization was. And at the time, really the only thing that I knew a lot about was cars. My dad, ever since we were young, he would always bring us to the New York City Auto Show. And I just loved learning about cars. And that's sort of where the conversation led to. Career counselor was like, so you want to be you want to work on cars?
You're like, that's not what I said. You want to be a mechanic? I like the brand. Yeah.
I was like, I don't necessarily want to be a mechanic. I'm not that much into cars, but I know a lot about them, and I like their commercials, and I love just the way that they brand themselves and promote themselves. Yes. And so one thing led to another. Back in the day, this was 20 years ago, I faxed in an application, got no hits or replies back. And then I did what a lot of other people were doing. You just print out your resume, try to connect with your mom or dad's
Yep.
friends. My parents didn't go to corporate America. They didn't really work in this space. And so I looked up that the fact that Mercedes-Benz headquarters was actually only about 20 minutes from where I was living in New Jersey.
I think it's really important what you just said when you talk about like our parents didn't have a network for us. We're building that network right now for our children, right? So if you think about like Jai, like you and I are connected, we're gonna connect other people. We're gonna be the people that pull each other up and push others up. You know, I don't always think that we have to pull up. Sometimes we need to push people up that we know, like here, run, you can run further, faster, farther. Um, our parents didn't have a network that we inherited. And building one has been like, to me, you know, something that we need to do on the regular. Like it has to be like your job. You need to build your network. But I think as you go into it, like when I found my job, my first job out of college, I just bid on it by points at the career center. Like there was no way, you know, like it was like if you really want an interview with, at the time it was Accenture was like my top list. You know, you had to put like all your points on that interview. And, you know, to hear you talk about like my parents didn't have anyone to connect us with, I think that unfortunately that still holds true for a lot of people in our culture.
Definitely, especially first generation, right? We get to this place where we need to now graduate from school and somehow land an opportunity in this very difficult, landscape of generations that have been here for so long, that have these connections, that have these parents working in these corporations for 20, 30 years. I
Right.
didn't have that anywhere around me. And so I think I got lucky in a sense, but it absolutely took hustle and grit from me being like, well, they didn't reply to my fax. I'm going to just print out my resume, show up to the lobby, and hopefully someone pays me attention or gives me an opportunity, or at least
Or
tells
tells me
me
who to talk
what to
to,
do
or
next.
yeah. So what'd you do, Jai?
I did just that. I printed out my resume. One of the security guards at the corporation felt bad for me, and he was like, okay, you don't have an appointment with someone in HR? Just hang out here. I know one of the HR ladies. Let's see if they have a moment to just have a conversation with you. And I waited there for a couple hours, and one of the HR ladies came out and was like, what are you doing?
Can I help you?
Yeah, we don't have an appointment. We don't have any open positions. Like, what's up?
Yeah.
And I need an internship. I don't know what the process is. I couldn't find any information on what your process is for getting these internship slots, if you even have any.
Right.
He said, well, the process hasn't started, but leave your resume and we could possibly give you a call. And it worked in a couple of weeks. That gave me a call, and I had an opportunity to work within the corporate communications department, where I was writing executive bios. And also something really fun that I will never forget is the opportunity to actually lend out the car fleet to journalists from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. So my job was to actually get those really cool brand new cars washed, which was really fun on my part. I'll never forget that. And it was so cool. And what a unique opportunity to be able
That
to
is so cool.
take the cover off these brand new cars, hidden, taking them to the car wash.
Are you nervous? I would be so nervous because those are like $100,000 cars.
Oh my gosh. And way beyond that.
Maybe more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was like 19, 20 years old. I was like, do these people know that I haven't even been driving for that long?
Right. Yeah.
I'm like a full-blown adult here. This is a lot of responsibility. It was fascinating. They would let me keep some of the cars on the weekend, and my dad was like, Jai, where did you get these cars? Like, what are you working on? He had no idea
Yeah.
where these expensive cars were coming
Like,
from.
are you selling drugs?
Yeah, even the neighbor was like, what is going on with this little 19-year-old girl? Where is she getting these cars?
Yeah.
It was a trip. It was very, very cool.
So that's exciting. You land the job with like one of the biggest brands worldwide. And I think the important thing to take away is that you did it in a very conventional way for that moment, right? Which is like, I'm just going to show up and I'm just going to say here, I've got my resume printed. I've tried faxing it. I don't have a network. So the only way for me to get in is through the front door.
Yeah, that's right. And half of that was luck that they had an opportunity in the coming weeks, that
Mhm.
someone had some time available to speak to me. But I think the other half was sort of like betting on myself, like, what do I have to lose?
Yeah, this is
I
going to
don't have
happen.
school
Yeah.
today. I've got nothing else to do. I might as well, take the drive, print out my resume and see what happens. But I think a lot of people don't shoot their shot. They sort
Right.
of
No, I
remove
agree.
themselves from any opportunity
They would
by
have been like, I
being
faxed it.
ghosted.
No me llamaron.
Right, right. They
Yeah.
didn't reply back. And I was kind of like, well, I have nothing else to lose. Let me just show up and see what happens. And a lot of what I've gotten
Mhm.
and asked for throughout my career has been in that wavelength. Hey, I'm just going to ask, I don't meet the qualifications or the criteria or the characteristics or even the time zone, but I'm going to ask. Why
Right.
not? At the end of the day, it could just be another conversation and connection and maybe opportunity for someone else. But I've
It's so
always been
important.
bold.
So many people don't apply for positions if they're not like 100% of the qualifications. And I think that that is such a miss. And I will say, especially for women, because if it's a stretch role or a role that you're not uniquely qualified or you don't have 100% of the qualifications, and it came down to like women versus men, like 80% of the time on a stretch role, the woman gets the job. The thing is, most women won't apply. And I would even extend that to most Latinos, right? We kind of shoot our shot and we say, oh, well, I emailed them or I called them or I saw them at the job fair. Yeah, I se acabó. And I tell people like, if you are truly persistent or like stay on it, engage where they engage, like intercept them as many times as you can. I have gone to networking events with like a name on my hand and I'm like, this is the person I'm looking for. So that I find them because they're the ones who I want to help me with my career.
I love that. And that's exactly right. And some people don't realize that it could be a keyword or
Mhm.
something on your resume that draws their attention.
Right.
You may not
Mhm.
have the qualifications, but the fact that you worked at the Boys and Girls Club, or you have a very strong connection to your local church, or you play lacrosse, it could be literally
Yeah,
anything
anything.
on your resume that could draw that person's inquiry and attention, and they could say, wait a minute, I have something in common with this candidate. Maybe
Yes.
they didn't articulate their skill sets, but I want to at least have a conversation because we go to the same church. I've
And
seen that
people
happen.
love to hire people they know or that they feel that connection with. And so unless you intercept them or find them or whatnot, they're not going to have that personal relationship or that sense of belonging.
That's true. I used to be in recruiting, and even with the network that I've built right now, like 30,000 some odd people on my network in LinkedIn, I still get a lot of people asking me for support in finding their next opportunity.
Mhm.
And most of the time when I review their LinkedIn profiles, I'm like, what is this?
Like, what are you doing?
It's
Yeah.
empty. I have no idea what you do currently. You don't even have a professional headshot, a banner. You're not descriptive in what you're looking for. Like, they're not even doing the bare minimum. And it's crazy because
Right.
LinkedIn's been around for over 20 years. I've been on LinkedIn for,
I was going to say, now you're the LinkedIn guru, though. You're the LinkedIn like poster child. So, how did you get so good at it? Or how are you, what do you think differentiated you?
well, I've been on it for 18 years. It's been a long time of me sort of
Mhm.
adding and removing and creating how I want to be perceived. And so that's certainly taken quite a while, and it changes almost every other year. I
Yeah.
think I've seen some really good examples of how people brand themselves. And
Mhm.
so I've mimicked that along the years to be able to say, wow, mira a ella, that's so beautiful on how she posted this article, talked about how that impacted her, and then tagged the person at that nonprofit that she's helping fundraise for.
Yeah.
And so I was picking up a lot of those best practices. And when you become really good at leveraging LinkedIn, it's not about you. It's actually
No,
about someone
the
else that
network
you're
and
trying
who
to
you can
promote and
help.
support. It's
Yeah,
about a nonprofit that you're trying to help fundraise for, and it's about giving props to your team that helped you launch whatever project or transformation you just completed. So when you get really good at it, it's not like, oh my God, look at me, I'm at a gala.
yeah.
Here's the nonprofit, here's their mission and their cause, here's the
Right.
executive director. Would you like to be here next year? Here's who to reach out to. Would you like to donate? Here's the donation link. And here's what's next for this nonprofit. A lot of people
Absolutely.
are very caught on the self-serving part, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. And so a lot of people shy away from, oh, I don't want to be on LinkedIn. It's so braggy and, boastful, and I don't want to, make other people feel bad. And it's not about that at all.
No, it's not. I 1,000% agree. I think so. One of the things I like about LinkedIn is it helps you get noticed. And especially if you're applying for a job, I always tell people like stalk the hiring manager, find them. They're on there. I promise you, every recruiter and HR manager is on there. And the other thing is, I'm like, study the company. Go look at the other people who have worked there. Look at their positions. How long have they been there? Do they have a lot of new hires? Or, are people there who have been there tenured and, have been there a long time? Go through and find the people who work there. And how many of them went to your university? Can you reach out to them and tell them, like, hey, I'm posting for this. Would you mind putting in a good word for me or talking to me about the company? And so I think it's a great resource. I think it's one that you are an all-star at. But I also want to get back to your career because I think it's phenomenal. You're not with Mercedes-Benz anymore. Where did you go to afterward? And also, what did your career counselor say when you came back and you're like, got an internship at Mercedes-Benz?
They were fascinated. They were like, okay, that's not one of the fashion brands like DKNY and Carolina Herrera and
Mhm.
Oscar de la Renta, that Tommy Hilfiger that we usually place interns at.
Right.
So let's build this opportunity and this bridge. And
Yes.
so I had an incredible time there. It was a blast. I actually pitched to the corporation to be able to manage some parts of diversity, because that was really at the core of what I was practicing and focusing on even 20 years ago. That corporation was not about it 20 years ago. It was a German company, and they didn't really have an emphasis on making sure that diversity was imperative to what they
Yes.
were doing in the community, especially in the Latino community.
That
And that
makes
wasn't
sense.
okay with me. And so
Yeah.
what I did was, okay, well, I want to practice my Spanish language. I want to make sure that I work with corporations and brands that really value us as a community and understand our buying power. And so I
Yes.
started to look around. I made my way to a public relations agency that gave me the opportunity to learn about a number of their clients in various industries, in finance, in nonprofit, in healthcare, etc. And that was fascinating at such a young age to be able to have such a broad trajectory of clients that I was supporting from the
Yeah.
Spanish and Portuguese language, writing press releases, working with journalists, making sure that these brands were in the Hispanic community. And that was fascinating.
Now you're speaking Spanish at work. Were there other people who looked like you there?
At the public relations agency, yes, because it was a
Good. Yeah.
multicultural, diverse agency.
Mhm.
And we were, in essence, pitch hitting for these corporations that didn't have a diversity department 20 years ago at that time. And so
Which was
these
almost
leveraged
zero,
our
right? Like I
field.
can't even think of one that would have had it 20 years ago.
Yeah. And so a lot of corporations said, oh, we do need our press releases translated to Spanish. And so they were utilizing us as an agency to be their boots on the ground at these conferences representing Pfizer, MTV, Prudential, etc.
Love it.
It's fascinating. And eventually later on, they would build out their diversity departments. But 20 years ago, they needed support from subject matter experts like
Yeah.
us.
I mean, if you think about just even the Spanish language from 20 years ago, if you saw it in advertising, you'd be like, Oh, even now, sometimes I'm like, that's not how we say that. But 20 years ago, it was horrible because it was almost like the Google Translate, right? Where it just literally took the sentence and then put it in Spanish. And you're like, but that's not how we talk.
Still a very big problem now. There are so
Yeah.
many corporations that don't find the value in bringing in a professional translations agency. For a lot of the projects that I do, I use a company called Yuca Lab, YUCA Lab.
Mm,
And they do all of my Spanish and Portuguese translations for
I love
years because they are the subject matter experts. And there is so much nuance and detail with the
so
audience
much.
and
Yes.
part of the country and the part of the world. So many of us didn't grow up speaking business Spanish. And so when my company, financial services, years ago on Wall Street was like, Jai, you speak Spanish. Why don't you help translate our materials? I was like, okay, I know how to do this. Of course, I was like, wait a minute, how do you say mortgage and life insurance in Spanish? How do you
I
say
know.
annuities? I was clueless.
It's so funny. I've done some business meetings in Mexico, and I always take someone with me to get the meeting started because, especially if they're like introducing me to a company, but it's just about how you introduce yourself, where you're like, Yo soy la ingeniera Nayeli, and you're just like, oh my God, this is so formal. And I think some of those things, like, in order to do them well, you need to have an expert that's going to walk you through, hold your hand, like tell you what's what. Because I very much, like, sometimes I feel like a fish out of water when we're trying to even like talk about billing or invoicing in Mexico. And I'm just like, now I have like that language down, but then we'll go into meetings and the same way I used to in English, write down the words I don't understand that to look up later. I'm now doing in Spanish where I'm like, I don't know that word either.
Yeah, I mean, there are legal implications of you not having a professional translations agency working on
Agreed.
advertising your website, your communications. There are so many challenges that corporations are facing because they're depending on their internal employees to translate these documents for them. It's
Yeah.
equally morally wrong. And that's not what your employee is paid to do, number one. That is taking advantage of the
Right.
employee, second.
I 100% agree with that. Okay, so I know you've done a lot of work, not only in building your career, but in helping others. Look, the sun's coming out. I could feel it on my face. Helping others build their careers through Latinista. So, for those of you who don't know what Latinista is, it is a national network of women and Latina professionals invested in like career and leadership development, right?
That's
So
right.
tell us a little bit about how you got started, or what inspired you, or what made you take that leap.
Definitely. Well, 12 years ago, when I was working down on Wall Street and in the industry and in professional financial services, I needed support. I needed a mentor, a sponsor, a champion. I needed someone who would help me have these difficult conversations with my managers
Yes.
that were happening. And I didn't have the network. There were some Latino organizations that were galvanizing in New York City, but they weren't Latina focused. And there's so many nuances of being a Latina, an immigrant, and a first
Yes.
generation Latina in New York City when you're trying to look for help and nobody really understands those challenges that you face with your
Agreed.
accent, with not having a network, with people giving you microaggressions every single day, people treating you like the help, and you not understanding how to get ahead, how to ask for more money, how to have difficult conversations. And so, because I didn't find that network, I built it.
I
I
love that.
started sharing the resource of us getting together as a community at bars and restaurants and parks and building that community to be able to say, Latinas, let's activate. This
Yes.
network is about helping each other find jobs, find mentors, find apartments, and find community. You need
Yes.
help with your family situation. There are Latinas here that are in their 50s and 60s that have been there and that have done that. They will share their challenges and resources with you. And so our youngest member was like 18 years old, and our
Oh,
oldest member was
beautiful.
like well into their 60s.
I love that.
And it was this beautiful connection of us just helping each other. And we had this wonderful website on meetup.com where we would share activities and events. And even if you were all alone in New York City, you could show up and we'd have a community there and saying, oh my goodness, you're also here at the Latinista. This is such a cool event here at Wells Fargo. Fascinating. Oh my gosh. How do you know these people? How are we invited? Who should I talk to? I'm looking for a job. Are we doing anything
Yes.
like this? It was so
Ah,
incredible. And
that
now
made
I've got
that gave me
connections.
goosebumps because so when I moved to Dallas, I had relocated with PepsiCo from Chicago to Dallas. And I remember the first thing I was missing was community. Like I didn't know anyone down there. And I remember, this is like pre-internet and our phones, where I was just like, I remember pulling over to the side of the road and having like my gas tank light was on. And I called my parents and I'm like, no sé ni dónde está la gasolinera. And, and it was just such a moment of frustration. And so I went to a Mexican church. It was La Virgen de Guadalupe temple in downtown Dallas. And I remember just going there and sitting there. And then there was a family and they had a little baby. And I asked if I could hold the baby. And I was just like, oh, like I have family. We just need that sense of community or to find someone that looks like us, sounds like us, that we could relate to. And I think to like what you did, which is doing it in a professional setting, like how beautiful to have that and to be surrounded by other people that are also successful and wanting to help and wanting to have that network so that we can continue pushing each other forward. And now you're not just in New York City, you're also in Miami, Chicago, and California, right?
That's right. We have networks and communities everywhere because you'll always need support. I mean, we had requests from Latinas moving to Denmark. We had Latinas in Utah that didn't have the support system, that were working mothers that were looking for an opportunity to work from home somehow. And this was
Yeah.
years ago. So you didn't have the opportunities and flexibilities that we have now in remote or hybrid positions. And so it was really difficult to be a mom and you wanted to work because you had some
Yeah.
time on your hand. You just needed to do it from home. And that was
Oh, I think
unheard
that
of.
there's a huge opportunity to have jobs from 9 to 2:30 available for like mothers because I'm like, God, when my kids were little, if I could have worked those hours to like help be there after school, it would have been a game changer.
And now you're building a similar community in Chicago, right?
We have Las Trimas. And Las Trimas is just a group of women, and we get together once a month for Cafecito because we are, I'm like, we are not here to sell each other stuff. We just need to come and share same topics. And so, it was very interesting because this community was born to kind of lend support, especially for, entrepreneurs or people in corporate. And I remember one time one of Las Primas walked in and she said, I'm so sorry to take over this meeting. She's like, but my son's getting discriminated against. And they're calling him like Beaner and things like she's like, and I don't know how to respond. And we're all like, our first reaction is like a very physical, anger one. And, we just talked about it. And I'm just like, we all have faced discrimination at some point in our lives for how we look or how we sound or what we do or what we're eating. And so I was just like, I felt it was really beautiful to have this community to just like open up to and talk about it and just at least, even cry together because it's like, oh, like we went through this, but we don't want to see our babies go through this. Like, when does this end? And so I think it's important to keep creating those communities and those areas of belonging so that we can feel safe and have those conversations of like, hey, I'm going through this. Maybe you guys have gone through this. And so I love the age range that you're like, 18 to 60 plus, because it's going to be that diversity, not only of, Latina background, but also of like life stage.
I love that. I mean, we really need to get the Latinista together with Las Primas in
Yes.
Chicago and
Yes.
just,
Have the biggest cafecito party
yes,
ever.
work together on seeing how we can help each other build an even bigger community because just like you said,
Yes.
that's what it's all about. At certain stages of your life, you're going to
Yeah.
need so much support that you never even knew. And you might be living in a new city. You might be having a brand new baby. You might be going through a health scare or a health situation and you
Yes.
need someone to drive you somewhere. And honestly, we as a community don't ask enough for help. I'm like the number one. I'm moving next week, and so I sent out a calendar notice to all my friends. I said, I'm moving.
If you can make it.
It's in your
Yeah.
calendar. Here's the address of where we're packing everything up, and here's the address of where we're unloading. I will see you at either one with pizza and wine. And my friend
100%.
says to me, she's like, did you just invite me to your moving party? I said, absolutely. I'm
Yes.
gonna do this myself. And
Something comfortable.
I'm not picking up a couch with my husband, so let's go.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And kudos to you for leaning on the community. That's what it's for.
You have to. That is exactly what we want to make sure is common amongst us. We need
Yeah.
help. Ask someone. It shouldn't be weird.
Right.
Why
No.
would we have to pay a stranger? When I
Totally.
have like 37 girls, in my
Yeah.
community, they're like, hey, let me
It
know.
might be
I'm
more
down.
expensive if I don't know how much wine they drink.
Yeah, I've got plenty of it.
Awesome. Well, Jai, let's definitely build that bridge. I would love, maybe after you move, to have you back on here because I know we have more topics to explore together. But I thank you so much for your time today. I'm so glad you joined us, and I look forward to many more.
Thank you, Nallely. Thank you for inviting me to your community, and I'm looking forward to us meeting in person with Las Primas.
Me too, me too. And I will share Jai's information so that you guys can look up the Latinista or connect to her on LinkedIn and continue building our community, which is so precious and beautiful.
Gracias.
All right, adios.